I wanted to try to get back to, a little fun thing, is kind of because I'm just, like I said at the beginning of this episode, uh, since I just went down there about a month ago, my kind of top five favorite rides may have changed. And yes, I did this a few years ago, and I feel like maybe circling back to it. So, without further ado, let's just kind of get in on that. So, I'm going to go from 5 to 1, 1 being my favorite, and so on. And this is just looking at Walt Disney World and those 4 theme parks. I may do one next week or in the future of Universal rides, but for this one, I'm going back to kind of my Disney ones because I think it may have changed a little bit in terms of some of the rides that I said are my favorite there. But if you want to compare or not, I'll link that video where I talked about it last time. I didn't really circle out that one. It's actually just a whole episode. But you can check that out on the Mike Whitmer Podcast YouTube page if you were interested in that. But anyways, I'm going to start with number 5, which I am going to have to go with, which is now gone, Splash Mountain. Obviously, it's being changed over to, rightfully so, I think, to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and it had been years prior that I went on Splash Mountain, and we pretty much went on it, and we went on it multiple times when we were down there. That was one where, for the past couple years, just because when we went, it was warm but not warm enough to really do a water ride or stuff like that, or it was always under refurbishment, so we never really got to do it. So for this time, we actually went on it, and when we did Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, we went and rode that with no wait at all. We did that the first day we were all there in Magic Kingdom. It was just one that we hadn't done in a while, and it's such a great ride too. It was a great ride. Besides the drop at the end or whatever, it's just a good little story and everything, outside of the obviously problematic features of it. But overall, everything about the log flume ride of it is just, to me, one of the best, just not even just log flume rides, just best water rides that I've ever been on. Between the story itself, the thrill aspect of it, and the best part of it, you get wet, and at least for me, when I went, my shoes didn't get wet, and that's all I ask for. So I'm not slushing around, and my socks don't get wet or anything like that. That's what I want the most out of a water ride, is to get wet, but not too wet. And that ride has a good amount of wetness to not wet kind of scale that I like. But yeah, I think that's now in my top 5. Going to number 4 now, and which I'll have to say is probably Big Thunder. I think that may have fallen a bit on my list. Just trying to go off of muscle memory there of what I did last time. I think I had like maybe 2, but yeah, I definitely think that one's probably more of a number 4 now. Just because it's still just a fantastic kind of mine train ride. It has a good amount of thrill without getting too kind of thrilly. You kind of understand what I'm saying there. That's just one that I've just always enjoyed, and whenever we go down to Disney, and it's always just a nostalgia kind of ride for me as well. And that's why a lot of these rides and parks and everything are rated so high, because again, one of the things I did a couple months ago as well was rank the top 4, my 4 favorite Walt Disney World theme parks, which again is one I'll also link in this video if you're watching on that Mike Whitmer Podcast YouTube page. A lot of it is just a matter of nostalgia, and that ride has always been nostalgic. Ever since I was a young kid going to Disney, Big Thunder Mountain was always one we had to do when we were down there. We would ride it multiple times, and it didn't matter. It was no different this last time we went about a month ago, and similar to that of Splash Mountain that I just mentioned, it was one that I rode about a couple times, probably about maybe 3 times, I think. Definitely once to make it very merry. And the first day we went, I think we went a couple times. But yeah, that was another one. It was great because they're right next to each other, and what we do all the time is we do Splash and then we go to Thunder, or Thunder and then Splash. And the way we did it this time was we did Splash, we got wet, and then you dry off, and then you go to Thunder. That's just how we always do it. But yeah, that's definitely going to probably be my number 4 now. Number 3, I think it's still going to have to be, I think, Everest. I think it's now number 3 for me. It's one that, it's to me the best, even with the adding of the new Guardians roller coaster, and obviously I haven't ridden Tron yet because it still obviously hasn't been open yet. But to me, it's the best roller coaster in Disney World, hands down. And I don't think it's really that close. I think it's just, to me, it's the best roller coaster. It has great theming around it in terms of going on this hiking expedition of Everest and of the Forbidden Mountain and everything. There's the Yeti and everything. I know the Yeti isn't what it used to be when it first opened, but it's still got a great feel. And another ride that we do, again, tradition. It's kind of, I noticed too, especially when we went down there, whenever I'm on like the Disney app and looking at wait times, I feel like the popularity of that ride has also kind of dipped a little bit. Obviously, if you go to Animal Kingdom now, it seems like the long waits are for the rides and the Navigator Journey or Flight of Passage and the Pandora area. Or even at times, like we had to wait in a well over an hour line of the Safari line, which is obviously those are great rides as well. Even though I still have yet to do the Pandora rides. But the Safari ride is great, and those are usually the ones that have long rides. But for whenever I've looked, I've always see, and it probably depends on the day, obviously, and how busy it is. But I feel like it's lately, whenever I look, it's no more than like maybe a 45-minute wait. And when we went, we waited maybe at most half hour for Everest, and we rode it multiple times, not in one day. And the 2 times we went to Animal Kingdom, we rode it multiple times, just because the aspect of it going forward, and then you start going backwards, and even though there's no loop to it, it still makes you feel like you go through a loop. It's just so thrilling, and everything around it just so fantastic. Number 2, I'm gonna have to, I think 2 and 1 are probably about the same as what I did on that last one, but number 2 is gonna have to be Rise of the Resistance. Again, even though I'm not the biggest of Star Wars fans, but the just simple aspect of once you get on through the queue and everything, and actual on the ride itself, and we waited probably longer than we probably should have when we went to. Actually, there is kind of a funny story there. So, how we did it was. We just saw it was like, I think maybe at most like an hour wait, and we just said, no, what, screw it, let's just wait in it. And we waited so long that we actually got on the ride itself, and once you got to that scene where you're caught and you're being waited to get interrogated by the First Order or whatever, and you're in that room with all the stormtroopers, they had us leave the ride because it had broken down, and because of that, they gave us a lightning lane to come back for when the ride opened up, and we just left, did Toy Story Mania, then came back and rode it again, did it again. But just a little hiccup with that ride, and obviously that because there's so many moving parts to the ride itself, since it's pretty much 3 rides in one, there's a lot that can go down with it. And obviously one thing that happens with it is that it just unfortunately has a bunch of times where it just goes down and everything, so you can't control it, obviously. So yeah, we were a little annoyed because we had to wait so long and everything just to finally get on and to have to exit the ride. But we were able to go back on, go through it. It was great, still a fun ride. But again, it's just that aspect of you feeling like you're in the Star Wars universe. You feel like you're there. Like that's how great that ride is. And obviously, you're not actually there. It's not really that, but it just has your imagination going. It's like, oh wow, I'm like in a Star Wars movie right now. It's just that kind of feeling around it. It's just so incredible. Which then leads us to number one, which is still probably my number one. And even though we weren't able to do it because the line was no shorter than 80 minutes, as Tower of Terror. And even though that was one ride we didn't do the whole time we were down there, I think we went to Hollywood Studios at least 3 times when you're down in Disney for the 10 days we were down there. That ride is just always going to be my number one, between the theming, the thrill element of it, of the drop tower, just everything about it is just so fantastic that I just can't move it from my number one. And again, the nostalgia factor, and even though we didn't do it this past time, it's always a go-to. It's always one I would always recommend. If someone comments below or ask me what ride should I do if I have only like a couple hours to kill in Hollywood Studios, what ride should I do? And Tower of Terror is going to be absolutely one I would always recommend. Always going to recommend that ride. And even if you're not, and maybe it's just me, and obviously there's just people who have fears of height and everything, so a drop tower ride is just not going to be for them. But for me, and maybe it's just me, I feel like that enclosure a bit of what the ride is, and you're not really seeing all the way out. You're seeing out a little window. I feel like to me that makes it a little better than going to what I mentioned earlier in Universal, like Dr. Doom's Flight or another drop tower where you're just kind of out in the open, like any kind of carnival drop tower rides or anything like that where you're more out in the open and seeing more around you, which can be cool in its own right. And obviously I don't really have that fear of heights. So either one's fine with me, but I feel like that the feeling of it being kind of closed off and I feel like it's a little more safe that way. Obviously, they have safety in mind with those rides, and obviously, if you have that fear, you just sort of that fear that something could go wrong and everything. I completely can understand that, but just to me, it's just one where if you have that fear, I'd still, if it's a minor fear, I would still have you do it. Because even we went with someone who wasn't a fan of heights and everything, and even my older brother Matt would never do it when I was a kid. Never do it because he was afraid of heights and all that stuff. But now he loves the ride. He conquered it, and now he likes it too. He loved, and for a similar reason why I like it. The theming, the feeling of the Twilight Zone and everything like that. Just everything around it, this abandoned hotel and everything, is just so incredible. And the Imagineers did a fantastic job with those rides, and all 5 rides that I mentioned, and I could go on and on, and these are very tight-knit kind of things in terms of what's making one ride better than the other. But yeah, those are probably at the moment, my outdated top 5 favorite rides in Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World.